Diamond, D-I-A-M-O-N-D.
A precious gem of the most valuable kind. When pure, it is clear.
Diamond, D-I-M-O-N-D.
A family name bringing traditions of love, hard work, and moral values.
This is the Diamond Education Podcast with my mom and dad, Johnny and Kelly England.
Welcome to the Diamond Education Podcast. We are your hosts, John and Kelly England. We are so excited to have you with us today. We are here bringing you the most valuable education for your children.
Today on the show, we have Krysten Robbins. We're excited to have her. Krysten has been married 18 years to her high school sweetheart, Danny. They are raising their 5 children in northern Utah, ages 1 to 15. In 2006, she graduated with a bachelor's in interior design from Weber State University. She won 3rd place in a national kitchen and bath competition held in Chicago. Good design and architecture make her heart skip a beat. Since college, she has embraced being a stay-at-home mom with occasional freelance design work. She hopes to return to helping real estate investors flip properties. In 2019, she became passionate about understanding alternative education. Being surrounded by scholarly mentors, the Robbins home has been awakened to a plethora of ideas. Her life has been enriched as she's coordinated a custom-built schedule for each child. Welcome to the show, Krysten.
Thank you. So good to see you guys.
And we appreciate you coming on. And we're going to hop right in. So, Krysten, what is education?
Education to me is like sweet like honey. I feel like if a kid can really be enjoying learning and loving to learn, I think that is my job is helping, I suppose you could say. We have a lot of experiences in our home, and as long as they're growing personally and developing, I feel like that is enough. I really have a goal of having my children graduate high school with a taste of they want more, and that this is a lifelong process.
What is your background and your family education journey? We heard a little bit about that in the bio that we read, but we'd love to hear your story about why you chose to homeschool.
Yeah, it developed over a few years as little experiences were culminating. But ultimately, my 6th grader went to her 7th grade junior high orientation. And there was a whole gym full of electives, I guess you could call them. And there was orchestra and art classes, everything you can imagine under the sun filled this whole gym. And she was in an immersion program. So we went back to like the immersion room where they said, okay, if you're an immersion student and you choose to keep going, you've got a half a credit. And she left that orientation super disappointed. And she said, I really want to do art, and that 3D machine looked awesome. And orchestra, I wanted to play the violin since she was like 3. Like she'd been working up toward junior high. And she was like slightly bugged that her immersion program was going to take that much. And she says, I just want to do what I want to do. And I said, don't we all? Like I kind of snarked. And she goes, I just want to be homeschooled. And I thought, well, the grass isn't greener. So, okay, I'll start looking. So 5 months into it, I went to a parent meeting and at one place, and I came home and I just was like not inspired. I said to her, you're just going to go to the junior high. And she said, okay. Yeah. And it was her response that I was like, I'll keep pushing. I can tell she really wanted it. Yeah. So a couple more months and a couple more parent meetings later, I ended up meeting people that I was inspired by. And a certain lady walked into one of the meetings and I was like, why she's here? Like, this is what she does with her kids. And I knew her from my community, but I didn't know she homeschooled. I didn't know anything about it. So that's what got me really my wheels turning. And then my other children as well. It was more because socially, one of my daughters was being influenced, and she was only in 5th grade. But from the time she was 8 years old in 3rd grade, she was changing. She wouldn't wear certain things. She wouldn't do her hair a certain way. She was changing like dramatically. And then she was in only 4th grade. I was just going to take the 7th and the third grade that following year out
Uh-huh.
and leave the middle daughter because she was very like, I will not be homeschooled. And a lot of advice I was getting is leave them until they want it. I was like, okay, I guess we'll take the 2.
Yeah.
The second grade, it was more because she just had a really hard time keeping up with, well, it was interesting because she started school really high level and, well, high for a kindergartner. She could read and
Yeah.
she was excelling. And she ended second grade like falling off charts. And I went to her teacher and I said, if she's falling off charts, shouldn't she be repeating school this grade? And I had never experienced the No Child Left Behind Act. But when that was the answer, I was like, whoa, wait, hold on. Not for my kid though. Like, I just didn't really like this conveyor belt idea. And I also noticed when we pulled our 7th grader out, how much gaps she had in her learning from second grade, like telling time, counting money. I just thought, I don't like this. In 6th grade, our math teacher, the Dibbles test back then, it was showing that my student needed support and needed help. So I asked for anything I can do at home. Can you send her home with anything? And he goes, that's the weird thing, is there is nothing to send home. Nothing to send home. Like, what are we using here?
Yeah. Well, and I love that your 15-year-old initiated.
Yeah.
I want to do this, because sometimes it's a lot of us parents kind of pushing it, and that she initiated it.
It's true. She did help. And I actually wanted to homeschool when she was in kindergarten. And I've heard this story many a time, so I know it's not unique just to our family, but our husbands talk us out of it. And they say, oh, you got your plate full though. Like they go into protector mode of, don't want to add one more thing. Like, come on. And so he talked me out of it.
And I get that for sure.
So I had it in me, but I didn't really think much about it after she started.
So on that, would you say, like with that, your husband's worry of one more thing to do, did it really add one more thing? Like, did it get much worse or much better? Or because a lot of moms do have that concern, right? Like, how am I going to do it?
Right.
So,
yeah. I hear from a lot of my peers, like, I could never do what you do. I have a lot of respect for the people who are in public school. They're doing something really hard too. I think you got to pick your poison. You're going to sacrifice no matter what you do as a mother, and you're going to have different worries. I would choose my worries over the worries I used to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard. It's stinking hard, but I think so is life.
Yeah.
So
it's not meant to be easy.
Yeah.
No, I love that because a lot of, I think some who want to do homeschooling, they come to you and it's like, it's hard. It's a different hard, like we can't sugarcoat it. Right. But like you say, there was a lot of hard, like you say, with the public school, that went on too.
And I actually think it's similar to, we had a conversation a few weeks ago with Jamie Buckland. She's from West Virginia, but she's a homeschooler as well. And she mentioned like, it's just about like, am I choosing this set of trials and difficulties or this set of trials and difficulties? It's not that they go away or that anything like that. It's just, what do I want as a family, which I found really interesting there. And it sounds kind of, you had a similar experience of kind of what set do I want of difficulties, because I know that we've had troubles with homeschooling sometimes too. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, and sometimes there's trials that come along with just homeschooling too.
But I would add to that though, but homeschooling for me has been the greater reward. Like,
Well,
and the rewards I think do change.
So
that's the part I didn't realize I was giving away, is when those parent teacher conferences and the teachers are sitting across from you and they're just like beaming with pride. And they were like, watch what they can do. Like, this is amazing. They used to not be able to do this, but I didn't actually really know that. I knew like they were growing, but until you're like in the thick of it and helping them through the tantrum of their brain working hard and blowing steam. Yeah. And then overcoming that and seeing the fruit of your labor, like you really don't understand how sweet education really is. And I have been able to reap the rewards of that now. And I'm like, now that's why those parent teacher conferences, they were so thrilled to show us.
Yeah.
And now I'm that mom that's like, watch what she just added 3 digits. That's a big deal because
Yeah.
Right.
of how far we've had to come to get to that point, you know?
So looking kind of back, there's a lot of, we've talked to a couple moms too that are, it's not that they're adverse to starting homeschooling, but they're really nervous. And so I'm just wondering, did you experience some of that when you began homeschooling, and what was that like? And what was that journey of maybe mindset change or paradigm shift that happened as you were began in regards to your view of you being the teacher?
It had a lot of puzzle pieces, and it was, you know, family member that had been homeschooling for a few years, and then actually 2 of my closest friends were homeschooling, and it wasn't really changing my mind, but it was all of my experiences adding it up together, and then hearing all of their experiences, and just I remember saying, "Hey, can my kids be part of that class?" And they're like, "Oh, no, it's during school hours." And I was always like, "Oh, of course, it's during school hours." It became me being really prayerful and asking a whole bunch of questions. And then Heavenly Father was putting people in my path to answer my questions. So I think it's been more of a spiritual progression for me and growth than I ever realized education could be. We have families to influence. And what better way to influence them than integrating all these subjects together? Like, what I was noticing is my kids would read a book, like specifically about Harriet Tubman, our very first year out of the public school. And my daughter in 4th grade, she would say, "Mom, I never knew that Harriet Tubman was led by the Holy Ghost, or she was led by the Spirit. They never taught me that." And I was like, well, of course, they can't teach you that in school. And so it was interesting for us to be able to bring like our beliefs and our faith into learning.
It's true critical thinking. Like it's not being told what to think. It's them reading and interpreting the truth in it. And it's
That's so true.
And it's hard. For me, I grew up in public education. It's hard it takes work to get in that mindset.
I do think it is a paradigm shift that you have to go through in order to, as you go through, as we've spoken to other like homeschool parents, or even just people who are looking for other alternatives. There's almost this transition from being a public school student to some other form of student, right? And that's really an interesting, I think, aspect of homeschooling or any other type of education that's out there. So
it's like the teacher dispensing their filtered knowledge, right?
Have you read Turn the Page?
No.
It's reading like a leader, but it's interesting. They said, even if you read these books that, are tough to read, but you don't agree, how it develops character too, because then, I don't know about you, if I don't agree with something, you want to go and find why you don't agree, right? Like, and go to, and find, so you can be able to articulate that. Like, I don't agree because this, right? Like, because it's a weak argument. You see it in the social media feeds and there's a lot of weak arguments out there, and people take that as truth.
There's a lot of leaders in homeschool. Like it takes some passion, I feel like, for you to keep going and really understand like why you would even want to do what you're doing. I've met some of the most high character and moral valued women.
Yeah, I know. And I love that, because I think what's hard to going to homeschool, Krysten, I don't know if this rings true, because we've noticed our kids didn't fit in that mold, right? That box that's out there in the public education system. And that's hard, right? Like, to realize, why don't they fit that mold? Or, or I feel like there's more out there for them. And when you leave that, and there is kind of a stigma when you leave, right? Like, but then you shed that I don't care, right? My kids get to choose who they become with the help of the Lord. Like, and it looks different for each kid, and because I've got 5. I don't know about you. You have 5 too. It looks different for each kid, what they're passionate about, how they're going to learn. And it's almost freeing in a way to just put your trust in the Lord and walk with him.
And we've talked a lot about kind of your homeschool situation. I wonder if you can share some of the success stories and maybe some of the blessings that you've had from homeschooling your children.
I have had quite a few success stories. Actually, our parents are super supportive of us in homeschooling, which is, I think, a little bit unique. I think some people's parents are skeptical, the grandparents. And so I've noticed a big difference with the relationship my kids have. The grandma will come every Monday morning. She'll help us for 2 hours. Grandpa is like a rocket scientist, and so he has been super interested in teaching them about space, and he's done chemistry with them and other science type classes. And now he's serving as one of our daughter's writing mentors, which we didn't realize he had that amazing skill, but you get to know them in a different way. I feel a lot of peace that comes from shedding any of the social pressures. It's allowed me to just parent to the best of my knowledge. And then my influence has been greater on my kids. People will comment a lot about, your kids have a light. Your kids look me in the eye. Your kids work. Yeah. It feels like we're having more experiences as a family that are a lot more uplifting. So
that's awesome.
I wouldn't say it's roses all the time, but you got to learn how to work together.
Well, that sounds like a lot more contentment and just happy with who they are. So I love that.
Yeah.
So
it's been good. It's been a pleasure to share all these little experiences with them too, because I think in the homeschool world, it is more based around families than just sending your kid off. And that was new news to me, actually. I was like, okay, so you're going to teach, because we started a co-op right away. You're going to teach this, that, and the other week. And one of the moms, who's like 15 years older than me, she's been like my biggest mentor. She says, yes, but we do not drop our children off. We all attend. We're all in this together. I was like, I like that.
Okay, Krysten, what advice would you give parents looking into homeschooling or just starting?
I would just say to keep it simple. I would say rub shoulders with the women or men in your life that you are noticing that are part of that community, and then just start asking questions. And then finding, what I did is just I find common denominators between families. Like, what are they involved in? Oh, I've been hearing that. Did you guys do the same thing, or how did you find Ascend? Did you do that?
So it's weird. So, well, I kind of told you our story.
How did we find Ascend? I don't even remember.
I thought John knew, but he didn't. So we had been like, what are we going to do this next year? You were scared about homeschooling, all that, but I had 5 kids and I was really nervous about starting out homeschooling 5 of them.
And they were all,
I felt like I was going to mess them up, right? Doing 5. And so it was weird. One day, a neighbor who I love to death, but I'm not super close with, he coming to play with Rory. One of the little boys was coming to play with Rory, and she just out of the blue was like, Kelly, have you heard of Ascend? I'm going to send my boy there. And I was like, no, tell me about, so it was just really, you could see, you've talked to the Lord when you start down this rabbit hole, right? Like of homeschool, like he just puts everything and it's worked into place. You know what I'm like, what each kid needs to be. And each year it looks a little different. And that's like, it doesn't have to look the same every year. And that's what I love. Like the other day I was driving down, I think I even said this last podcast, I was like wanting to yell to the world, like, oh, the possibility, like my world has just gotten bigger because of the possibilities for education, for each of my children and me. So it was just being open. It's that being open to what the Lord wants, and he'll guide us. But so it was really just a neighbor randomly brought it up to me. So she didn't even know what was going on either, like with like us looking into things. So
well, that's funny. Yeah. See, he puts people in your path. When people are hesitant to start homeschooling, it makes me want to ask them this question. I don't know if I haven't actually asked anybody, but I want to know, like, are you monitoring what how much time is going into these extracurricular activities that you're putting your time and energy into, and what are you getting out of it?
Yeah.
Or is it just like sucking your money away and sucking your kid away? And I like to make conscious decisions and choose things that are super valuable and will give us back what we put in, the sacrifice it takes to get them there.
Yeah.
So the things that we have chosen, I'm super excited about. And I'm like, no, when things get hard, I go, no, I like this. Actually, it's worth it to me.
Well, and it seems like even with the sports, like the fact that we're homeschooling and then they do sports after school or whatever, like we've already had some time with the children too, right? So it's like,
yeah,
I guess it feels less of a burden because we've already spent quality time together that day, and it's not taking that quality time away that was so limited when we were in public schools.
Well, and to add on to that, I think a lot of people think homeschool has to take the 6 to 8 hours that it does in the public, right? Where it's like, it's 3 hours, right? And then we don't have to worry about the homework they come home and do after being at school, plus the sports, right? And there goes your family, right? But
I feel like we're trading them in ways that we wouldn't have been able to because I didn't have the time when they were at the school. We'd rush them out the door. They'd come home. How's your day? Unpack your lunch, get in the car. Let's go.
Yeah.
Showers, dinner, bed.
Yeah.
And it was always that routine that it just bothered me for some reason, just didn't sit well.
Yeah, I'd add that it becomes that to-do, they become a to-do list almost, and it's watching that, right? Where
and that's what
they have freedom in the schedule, so.
Well, we've come to the end of our time together, and we always have one question that we like to ask all of our guests. It's a little bit off the wall, but who is one of your heroes from history and why?
That's a really good question. Probably whoever I'm currently reading about, because anytime I have a biography in my hands, I'm like, okay, that's my favorite person. Somebody that sticks out to me, motherhood has captivated me. I've wanted to read and study poetry or anything that anybody talks about their mothers, like at funerals or music that mentions a mother. I just always have tuned in since I was 16, and I've wanted to emulate women. So the person that came to my mind was Gladys Allward. She was amazing. She lived her life mission. I feel like just following what God wanted her to do, even though she didn't quite know the path that he was going to take her on. And I loved how she could stand up for truth, and she could have courage in the face of danger. If you haven't read about her, she's a good one to read about. And currently I'm reading Mother Teresa. I think being a nun would be hard and interesting in its own way, but she was a mother to so many. Yeah. It was phenomenal to read about how she cared for the poor, and she didn't die all that long ago. And so it's fun to see her being interviewed and receiving these prizes that she didn't even. What I love about figures in history that I'm noticing a pattern is their humility, and how they're like, you're giving me this, but I don't really feel like it's for me. I'm not doing this for me and the glory of. I just really admire people who have humility, and Mother Teresa was one of them. Gandhi was one of them. Martin Luther King Jr. Like, there's more work to do. They said, it's just because I got this prize doesn't mean the work's done.
Yeah.
And I would have known any of this if you talked to me 4 years ago and you asked me that question. I don't think I could have answered it because I wasn't really training my heart. Now I'm reading along with the girls, and I'm feeling scholarly myself.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm happy I can say I've put in a little bit of work to figure that out. And
it's fun. Wouldn't you say, like, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't agree with me, but the more you learn, the more you almost become addicted to it. Like, it's hard to do. Start it out, right? But the more you're like, oh, now I want to read that book, or and your book list.
My list of books is growing faster than my list of books read.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
so true.
Fun to get that love of learning in your kids, and then get that love of learning yourself. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys. That was really enjoyable.
Thank you for listening to the Diamond Education Podcast.
You can connect with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
At Diamond Education, DIMOND, or on our website, diamonded.com.